would you say that as a woman you had to do a lot less chores on the farm than your husband did, or a lot less work, or perhaps growing up as a female, did you have fewer chores than your brother?
I didn't have any brothers.
Okay, you have no brothers.
So, no, I never had the largest part of the work. I would say I was
You just
the
had 5
assistant.
children.
I was the assistant.
Okay, so but you did have to drive a lot of tractor and go
I
out
did.
there all the time.
And I liked it, and I would do it all over again.
Did Bob help much in the house? Because I imagine with 5 children there would be a tremendous amount of...
Well, he was good with the children. I did belong to some organizations so that I would be gone in the evening. I know I was in a Bible study group, and I was in a card club. And he was good that he would be in there with the children, and I could totally depend on them being fully, completely cared for.
As far as me, I guess when I think about it back there, and it was, I didn't have any sisters and that, so it was kind of, I suppose, had to get out there and help. We all had our kind of our jobs or would work together. My mother did come out to help quite a bit, and that she would help with the milking and stuff, and she took care of the chickens and stuff. But otherwise, Dad and I would do quite a bit of the other stuff and that. And of course, the one brother had then went to the service, and the other one had started some of his own farming too. So, but we all still had worked together as a family.
One time when I was in high school, I remember a Army recruiter came to Spring Grove, and he said, my officers are telling me that they don't want any more city kids. I mean, he could have been flattering us, he said, but they don't know how to work. They don't know how to follow orders. They want more farm kids because they know how to follow orders. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know, but would you say that as a whole, when you were growing up, did you learn how to follow orders?
And I think being responsible.
Yes,
Being
yes.
responsible.
Mm-hmm. You knew that things needed to be done and be cared for, and you did it.
So you're sort of proactive in making sure things get done rather than just waiting for
Right.
the calf to die or something because you forgot to water it or whatever it would be, or feed it. So farm kids are responsible. They also learn a lot of different
Skills, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes.
They help pull the load right along with the rest of you. I mean, they grow and learn and take responsibility also.
And there are so many things to be done on the farm. You can't really hire somebody to come and fix every little thing, a specialist that goes wrong on the farm. That would be very expensive, I imagine. So you learn a little bit of plumbing and electricity and all that stuff.
That's why they say you're a jack of all trades and stuff, and there's a lot to that, and I wouldn't give it up for nothing because of what you kind of learned and you had a chance to be experienced with, and actually after all the farming ideas that have happened, and that has led to the new modern technology that somebody probably was a farmer that kind of thought about in the first place, and has led on to more of these new ways of doing things.
Do you remember when you were younger? I know that a lot of kids these days, or when I was growing up, which is not these days, but when I was growing up, they would have farm permits for kids to get their license earlier. Do you remember any stories related to how you started driving an automobile, and do you remember when you acquired your first vehicle, or borrowed a first vehicle, or were allowed to drive your parents' vehicles?
Well, myself, I remember my first thing was that I would drive the pickup and that, and my mother had a friend that lived just a little bit west of us, and my mother did not drive, and so I do remember when I think I maybe been about at least 9 or 10 years old. I remember driving the pickup over to take my mother over to visit her, and now you be careful when you drive back home, and then I would have to come back and get her after a while and stuff, and so those were a few things, and
How old did you say you were?
I was 9,
9.
and so.
But you've been driving tractor before that.
Yeah, I've been driving tractor before that. Yeah.
And I probably was at that young age too. I think I was about 12 when I learned how to drive the pickup, and I remember driving it while Dad would unload hay or something out of the back for feeding the cattle. And I drove tractor at a young age too.
Do you think, looking back, that might have been dangerous at all, or were you?
No,
No.
I felt very responsible.
Okay.
The same here.
And I grew up with stories of my older brother Chris, supposedly driving tractor when he was 7 years old, and that is sort of scary to me. But I didn't have to when I was 7, so.
I think the thing that happened for us anyway was that you were on that stuff and you kind of seen somebody else driving, and you kind of learn, and the communication was, how did you do this, or what did you do, and you just kind of followed what had been done.
So driving a car wasn't very difficult compared to driving a tractor, because there's actually less things to learn. You don't have.
Well, of course, we learned when there the PTO shafts, but we learned when you use a clutch in the car and you had a handbrake, and
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Right.
Were you able to acquire a car for yourself when you were in high school, or is that something that came much later?
I didn't have a car until I had graduated. I got the chance to drive my folks' car, but otherwise it was either a car or the pickup I would drive. But I didn't have my own until after I had, in fact, even after I got my reserves. So I was not young.
Do you recall when you had your own car?
Well, it would have been after we were married. I didn't have, when I went to nurses training, I would either get a ride from my parents who would take me there, or use the bus.
Do you think if somebody were interested in farming, and say they were a city kid, or they didn't have a farm that they'd inherited, or inherited a part of, would it be even possible to get into farming and succeed these days?
The part there, I think it still comes down to how much have you got an interest in agriculture? How much have you got an interest in that farm, or doing those kind of things in that? If you have an interest in some of that stuff and really care about it, you'll try very hard to do something about it. And it may not always be possible for everybody, but yet again, there's always that possibility that you may learn something, or maybe eventually have it part of it.
And it's certainly not a 9-to-5 job.
Right.
And you better expect that you're probably going to get dirty.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I would say is, when it comes right down to it, you also are doing it more for the fun of knowing, learning, and as far as the income, that's probably the last thing that's going to come out of it. As far as a daily wage, because there's many times you work, your work is for nothing. As far as hourly wage, but you still enjoy it.
And some years make up for the bad years.
They do.
So you have to kind of take a 10-year approach, or.
Right.
Do you think that it's harder now for farmers to succeed than it was maybe 20 years ago, or has it varied so much depending on the political changes? I know when Jimmy Carter embargoed Russia, and it was hard on certain industries, the corn industry.
I think the thing that's the hardest maybe right now is the marketing, because you have to really watch your input costs on what you put into your crop or your enterprise. You also have to watch what you are going to make. The marketing can be a hard part of the whole works in that, because the margins have gotten so much harder to reach or to depend on because of what all goes into it. The fluctuation.
Did you have any comments on that?
No, I think that is a big part of it, and it's something that's always in your mind. You know, you're thinking in the spring of your planting and your inputs, but you're also thinking what your outcome will be.
Did you feel that you ever, did you ever feel like you had to really cut your budget or limit your budget in terms of, you know, the food you purchased or anything like that in order to get through some leaner years?
Yeah, you know, in a way, you always had to kind of watch and be cautious on all of that because every situation, every year could be a little bit different, and you always still had to kind of allow so much and maybe be concerned that maybe you won't get in as much as you think. It was always to the point that you had to be just a little bit conservative on certain things. And yet again, there was other years when you did prosperous, you took advantage of and made some improvements.
Did you feel like as a farmer you were able to have enough time to do the other things in life that you wanted to do?
To myself, I would say that it was, well, not today, not today, not today. But now that after I've kind of retired a little bit, I have kind of made up my mind that I want to try to do some of those things. And I've been working at it. It's gradually coming, but it's not coming as fast as I thought it was going to.
Mm-hmm. What are some of those things that you had as goals?
One of the things that I had in mind was that when I either repaired some fences or some property or that, well, it was kind of pushed into a pile up to the side, and it was one of those deals, I'll put it away tomorrow. Tomorrow kept on being maybe another year, maybe another 2 years, or whatever it was. And so now when I've kind of made changes as far as my farming and that, now I've kind of went back to try to correct some of those things that I had always, I felt made a mess. And one of my goals is to clean up some of the mess that I made when I was farming. But that still is a long time goal.
that might be a Storlie trait, because I noticed my dad's doing that too on the farm.
Well, I guess in a way, I seen one particular place where somebody had left the heirs quite a mess in that, and I just made up my mind afterwards that I thought, for myself, I'd like to change and make it a little bit better for the person who may take it over next time.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any goals, Barb, that you put off for a while?
I'm not thinking of any in particular, I guess. It is something that you constantly work at. You like to see improvements. You like to be able to do pleasurable things as well as work. And you take and you make time for what's important in your life.